What's going on, folks, and welcome back to some Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. Today's going to be a quick in-between. I'm still working on the lore videos and the second part of the Pantheon 1 year in review breakdown, but a couple days ago we got ourselves a live stream on the Pantheon Twitch channel, and they briefly dived into multiple topics including some new world building elements of Wild's End, which also includes a showcase of an area known as the Wellpond, along with revealing a newly designed dungeon known as Sevil Manor. Fair warning, there's not really any fresh gameplay, it's a lot of concept art and discussion with a couple of clips sprinkled in, so I wanted to just set expectations on that beforehand. But anyway, they started off by talking about what happened during the pre-alpha session. I'm actually pretty glad they decided to talk about it because it's always been so weird being in a testing phase and trying to find ways to dance around certain things that you already know about when making content. But they decided to spill the beans, so for those specific topics at least, we're all good. So on October 1st and 2nd, they had officially started this year's pre-alpha session and it ran for about 15 hours. This test featured some of their newer additions and upgrades to the game, such as the high-definition rendering pipeline for Unity and the in-house networking solution they built known as Vinyl. This gave them an opportunity to test many things including stability, and in that regard it was pretty successful. The servers were even able to handle up to 500 players in a single zone, all fighting and interacting with the game world at once and no sharding. Personally, I'm really happy to see stuff like this and I hope they continue to push that, even past whatever limits they anticipate before launch. Because if there's one thing we've learned about MMORPGs over the years and release, it's that most MMORPGs have never been fully prepared. And whatever player counts or limits you think might be acceptable, it's probably best to double or triple it and then gradually bring it back down if you need to. With how desperate a lot of people are in this genre, despite whatever positive or negative perceptions might be there for a game, if the stars align, it's got a good chance of attaining a lot of initial impressions unless you've just completely dropped the ball in some way before it actually comes out. But back to the pre-alpha, the test wasn't without its issues. There were some present on day one and even throughout. However, because of the newer systems in place for gathering data related to bugs and glitches, and systems that allowed them to roll out patches and hotfixes in real time, when they needed to push out a patch during this pre-alpha, it was instant. Players would be told to expect a patch soon, the servers would go down, and the players could immediately log back in. Almost no downtime whatsoever, as opposed to how normally, servers would go down for an MMORPG and we'd be waiting about 30 to 60 minutes for even a hotfix to fully apply and bring the servers back up. And for a lot of those times, the downtime could easily be extended for who knows how many hours. Another aspect they talked about during this live stream was the day-night cycle and how it affected the player experience during the pre-alpha test. This was basically the first time that the pre-alpha players got to experience this feature live, and although there were many that had feedback on what tweaks they could make or what pros and cons we experienced with this feature were, and even they said that there were certain things they noticed that might need fixing, the most common word to describe the experience with the day-night cycle and weather system was impactful. This changed up the way a lot of players were able to explore. You had to be more aware of your surroundings, use your torch more often, and it created this eerie, if not chilling effect that you just wouldn't get in MMOs that run on a full daylight cycle. All I can say is this is something I really hope MMORPGs will continue to employ in their games, and go as far as even implementing events and mob spawns based on the time of day, like Pantheon is already planning to do. But overall, Visionary Realms had a great time watching all the players interact with the game world. Whether it was players exploring through climbing or running around to see what adventures they could find, multiple groups of people that were farming in really high demand mob areas, or even how towards the end, a vast majority of the players had banded together on their own to take down one of the newest bosses in Thronefast. They still do have a long road ahead of them, but it did feel like what they were trying to capture as far as their vision for Pantheon goes. And as far as the pre-alpha test frequency, the main thing they wanted to improve on was stability, and now that they've done that, we can expect these tests to be hosted more often as they continue development. Now following this, both their lead writer Justin Gerhardt and environmental concept artist Brett Knuckles have been collaborating on the visual development of a dungeon called Sevil Manor. So this is a dungeon located in the Thronefast region, and originally, the manor had been a host to regal galas and parades of foreign guests. For a time, the family who owned the manor stood as the envy of the Court of Lords, and the manor was originally set to host the coronation of a king before the crimes of bribery and blackmail were uncovered. The Sevils never recovered from this public shame, and over decades this manor fell from its former glory into a den of depravity. The dungeon itself sounds like it's going to be filled with the undead, which are coming from those who were eventually slain as a result of the Sevil family's dark deeds, but it's also said that something could still be living inside the manor, and this will be up to the player to discover for themselves as we explore the depths of its halls. I think the two most important things I'm looking to see come alive in this dungeon are both lots of space for us to explore and farm in, and a dynamic adventure, because Pantheon is planning to follow a similar similar dungeon model to that of older school games like EverQuest. The dungeons we'll be going through will not have a traditional feel to them. The first thing is that there likely won't be a queue you can join to automatically teleport to that dungeon, but it also won't be a linear path that you take from start to finish. When we do make our way to these dungeons, we'll likely be able to choose our own areas to farm in, take on whichever mini bosses or main bosses we'd like to in whichever order, and the dungeons themselves will feature a more open world experience, meaning you'll likely see many other groups that are farming in the dungeons alongside you. Because of the space this requires, it's likely that running through one of these dungeons could take up to an hour or more. But aside from that, I would love to see them take it a few steps further. Maybe we could have a few rare spawns depending on the time of day, or have the dungeon run its own events on predefined or random intervals. And with the supernatural gothic feel they're going for, this could leave room for exploration in different dimensions or whatever cool things they're probably already having planned. But the next showcase they dive into focuses on an area known as the Wellpond from Wild's End. This is the halfling territory where players can start their journey. And the Wellpond is not only described as the starting area, but a naturally occurring phenomenon with equally fantastic and dangerous things to discover as you delve deeper. Just over a year ago, there was a gray box showcase of what the territory looked like, but now they were able to show it off in a terrain-based showcase. Keep in mind that creatures, flora, and fauna are not included in this clip, so everything you're seeing now is going to be different than what they have when the area gets fully designed. This area, among other underwater places, are going to feature things like dark dungeons, resource nodes as they mentioned in the alpha tracker, and underwater caves and temples. Just like the climbing, there will be a swimming skill that will dictate where and how far you go, but there will also be other elements that can help you survive, such as potions, maybe food buffs, and racial traits such as the dark myrrh. Pantheon is going to be a little bit different when it comes to the progression, because you could just as easily find something best in slot in the early or mid game as you could farming for hundreds of hours towards something specific at the end. I think it's quite possible that while exploring the full depths of this Wellpond and the surrounding area, maybe even Sevil Manor, you may come across an opportunity like this, and that is exactly what has me the most excited about this horizontal progression system among other benefits. But for now folks, that's everything we have to go over. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, have a wonderful night or day. Farewell.
Just